You're recording? Oh, meeting recording is in progress.
All right. Okay. Well, hello and welcome to another slam-tacular Empower Me session. I just made that word up, but it's going to be pretty, dope, as the kids say. Uh, I'm so sorry. I should write down what my opening statement is going to be. Um, but I am super excited. If you did attend the kickoffs and if you were taking notes, I have mentioned in everyone that this topic to me can literally be a game changer in not only in our careers, but in really in our personal lives as well as we orient ourselves around what does taking full responsibility for things in my life actually mean. So I've always looked at this particular part of the Empower Me piece as a kind of a pivotal experience. And as we've done in every session, we want to bring somebody in that's got a powerful story and has got something really great to share. And I don't want to overamp this guest, for a lot of reasons, but I am super excited to introduce to you Miss Amanda Sharples, who's going to be our host for Take Full Responsibility Yourself. Miss Amanda.
Woo!
Oh, thanks, guys. That's exciting. All right. Well, I feel like I have like really tall expectations right now. So hopefully we can live up to those things. So,
You
um,
do. You do. It's okay though.
oh,
You'll do it.
thanks. Carrie, are you giving me a high five or do you have a question? Okay. Oh, you're
I
Neither, just an old man trying to clap for the intro.
Oh,
Pardon me.
thank you. I love it. All right, so listen, this is the best part because I know that there are some incredible topics covered throughout the course of your Empower Me journey. And this one is absolutely near and dear to my heart. And having an opportunity to self reflect. For any of you that have worked with me, you'll probably know by now that I have no trouble being vulnerable as a leader because, in the end, I'm looking at you all here. You're investing in yourselves, you're on your own journey to try to discover who do you want to be as a leader, and if I can even remotely play a part in that, even a small micro fraction at the expense of sharing some of my journey, then I'm happy to do that. But I wanted to ask, first off, you guys had a couple articles that were provided for the content that we're about to discuss tonight. So I just want to open it up first and say, in reading that, wow, it really spoke to me. There was some overlap between the two articles, but anything in particular that resonated with the group around taking responsibility and ownership for your destiny? It sounds really powerful.
it,
And
I relate
it's
to a
okay
lot of
if
some.
not, but
Hey, Caleb, we're getting a delay. Try it again.
You're unfrozen now.
There we go. Is that better?
yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say the first article reading through it, some of the things of like kind of more the negative aspect reminded me of earlier jobs that I had where I started realizing that like certain positions weren't for me and it kind of helped me get away from them. Like I was decent at the job, but it wasn't terribly fun to work around because I didn't like the job, no matter how good I was at it. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, made me realize that the type of field I was in probably wasn't for me. And I decided to take a different route with it. And luckily ended up finding the corporate side of T-Mobile, which was closer to my family. So that helped out a lot and kind of feel like I'm going through part of taking responsibility for like how I affect everybody around me at work.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, right? Because we've all either experienced it personally where maybe we allowed ourselves to indulge a little bit in some of those natural feelings that we have as humans when we encounter difficulty. It's easy to look at what's happening to me versus, okay, here are my circumstances. What do I do? How do I influence the situation and make a choice how do I respond versus react to what's happening to me? And so in your example, recognizing that your work situation wasn't ideal to what you were looking to accomplish, or maybe an environment that you wanted to continue in, and you made a choice, and one that I think ultimately has set you up for a great deal of success going forward. Awesome.
Just to kind of piggyback off that, because I'm afraid that the thing I was going to say I might have already put in a comment online, but I definitely wanted to say, actually, I'm going to risk it. So the one thing that I thought about all of this is, I think the time when people get the most off track is when the way they see themselves doesn't line up with how the rest of the world sees themselves. And so uh, going it solo, I could see how there could be some problems if all the evaluation is done by yourself. If you're off target, how it would be important to have another person to run things by or bounce things off of, with any of like the holding yourself accountable, just to make sure that the way that your behavior is affecting other people, that it's accurate, um, and that you have a trusting, safe person to bounce that stuff off of, because how you see things and your own behavior and how you believe they are impacting others. Sometimes people are way off the mark as far as like where they think they're at. And so I think early on, at least for me, I feel like it would be important to have a person for that accountability piece to bounce things off people, so that you make sure that, well, I make sure that when I'm aware of things and how my behavior is, the outcomes and how it's affecting other people, that uh, it checks out with someone I trust their opinion, just because I can justify things or I can make excuses for things when it's just me by myself.
Well, I like that, Carrie, because just that acknowledgement that maybe having an extension of yourself in a trusted person that you can look to and say, hey, I know how I feel in this situation, but sometimes we can be overly critical of ourselves.
Hmm.
Sometimes we can subconsciously create excuses for ourselves and
Mhm.
how we're acting, or our thoughts, our actions. And having someone that you can go to as a trusted confidant that can, be open and honest and maybe even brutally critical of you at times is only going to help you grow. And
Yeah,
recognizing the need for that is super powerful. I love that.
thanks.
Thank you for sharing. So let me ask you. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, I kind of related to the second article a lot more. It helped me realize that I was doing things I was making excuses without realizing I was making excuses. In my head, I thought I was just explaining my, reasoning for things, when really it came across as excuses. So it
Hmm.
really helped me kind of put that to light, and hopefully, can recognize it and stop and ask myself, like, is this an excuse, or, is this valid to the conversation?
Right. I think a great question is this helping me get closer to where I want to be, or am I just trying to justify my circumstances? So story time. I told you guys I don't have an issue being vulnerable with you all. But several years ago, I was a coach, way back in Gen Care, and I desperately wanted to be a top performing coach, but I was struggling greatly. I couldn't seem to figure out why I couldn't get everything to connect. And for any of you that have worked with Brian Kenyon closely enough to know, like, he doesn't pull any punches. So don't ever try to make an excuse to Brian Kenyon, because he will definitely call you out. But I sat down at his desk and I went to him for advice, and I'm not really sure why, because I wasn't in a headspace to get the brutal honest truth, but I got it. Um, but what I realized in that is that when I was asking for help, I really just wanted to feel validated. I actually wanted for somebody else to,
Mm-hmm.
say that my own excuses, my own thought process was justified, even though it was holding me back. And so that was like a pivotal moment for me to realize that I truly felt like I was doing things the way that I needed to be successful. But I was really just making excuses for why I was struggling or why I wasn't doing something out of my comfort zone. And once I realized, you know, he wasn't being mean to say like, why are you just making excuses for yourself? It truly opened up a whole different mindset about how I went about my day-to-days. And it made me realize that I can apply that thought process. I think Red said this at the beginning, that this mindset, right? This mindset is applicable whether you're thinking professional growth or personal growth, because you ultimately get to frame your own reality. It's what you make of it, right? Do we work in an environment is our workspace always full of positivity and great customer experiences, and do they come to us to celebrate their amazingness and the great billing experiences our customers have?
Not always.
You get some, because I uh, I don't see too many of those calls, Carrie. I'm going to come hang out with you for a minute. But we could sit and talk about how hard the calls are and how difficult the customers can be and all the mistakes that we have to clean up. Or we can look at that as an opportunity to grow and learn and challenge ourselves, right? I call it learn through the burn. And when I know I'm going through a difficult period of time, whether it's personal, professional, I'm always thinking, what am I learning? How am I strengthening my leadership skill set? Because now I'm going to go through this experience that, is very challenging. It's mentally tough, but I know that in 6 months from now, I'm going to look back on this experience and be grateful that I had it, because I know that I can then be a better leader with what I've learned and gained from that time frame. What are some of the other takeaways you guys had? There's a lot. These articles were phenomenal and really helped me harness some of the things that I think I'm most fortunate or most thankful to have in my toolkit.
Definitely one of the ones that I focused in on, or that spoke to me most, was the living in the present moment. Just because by nature I tend to be pretty reactive, and I have developed, just based on things I say to myself about myself over years and years of doing that, um, just like a certain dialogue. And I wrote down and highlighted while I was reading through things and listening to the YouTube, um, uh, the podcast. Surrender habitual reactions that don't serve you. So I know that I am so guilty of, when I'm stuck, when I'm frustrated, um, I have, my knee-jerk reaction, honestly, is to kind of get stuck in a rut about why I'm not qualified, why I don't have the skills, why I don't have the knowledge to, to turn things around for the customer, if we're talking about on a phone call, when really the fact that I struggle sometimes to find information, find resources, or what have you. I definitely need to focus more on the fact that I love people and I love providing an experience, and I need to be better about feeling comfortable leaning into that while I'm learning the other parts and pieces. Um, Back in another life, when I was doing some work as a classroom teacher, I had something on my board that I wrote down as a quote for my students that I'd forgotten about until I started digging in this week. And it's a quote that says, to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. And somebody named Steve LaFontaine said that, and he's a runner. And it it used to speak so much to me, and I'd forgotten about it for probably 15 years or so. And so I've started really thinking about it during this week. And talent only gets us so far. Um, a big piece of it is what are we willing to invest? What are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to change about what we say to ourselves about ourselves? And as important as whatever like natural abilities we might have is the effort that we're willing to put in. And I certainly am somebody who, especially in the last year, it's been hellacious on a personal level. I'm somebody that was sacrificing the gift because I had a lot of excuses for why I couldn't focus on like my career, my development, and sometimes even my work, honestly. So this living in the like present moment really for me was and I think it was like in the podcast, like we can't always control the ripple, right? But Red said something like, but you can control which rock you choose and where you throw it in the water. And I definitely need to lean into that. That's probably my biggest takeaway from, this week for sure. This probably this whole month and maybe even maybe even this whole journey. But that's really big for me the last several days.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow, that's powerful stuff. And just knowing that you're looking at how do you lean into what works for you and try to focus on what you can control, and how do you leverage that to keep pushing yourself forward even when you're faced with circumstances that just seem unbearable. So
If I
kudos
could
to
just
you for doing so.
if I could just interject one other thing too, that it made me think that you guys are talking about. I know that all of this stuff is stuff that's like internal and self searching and whatnot. And I had mentioned having like an accountability person. And we were talking about, like, I was thinking about how we can kind of like almost lie to ourselves, and it's important to have someone that won't pull punches, even though I actually felt that nervousness for you when you said going into BK's office, and I know what it feels like to want someone to say something and they say the exact opposite, and you're like, what was I thinking? But you were hoping beyond hope that I don't know. Anyway, I know what that's like, and wanting that like to get that validation. But what I was going to say is I have to be careful because I might be likely to pick somebody that will I had a good leader that said, you don't want someone who will co-sign your BS. Meaning like, um, you don't want someone that, like, not for this kind of thing, a job, a career development, where, you have friends that they might say whatever you say, they're like, yeah, I hate them. And you're right. No matter what the situation is, they just have your back. They love you. They're going to tell you, because you could get really off track, or go into a situation if someone isn't if someone's afraid to tell you the truth and what their opinion is, and be blunt, or to be straightforward with you, it could be disastrous. And so some of my best leaders have told me, don't apply for that position, or don't do that right now. It's not the time that you'd be putting your best foot forward, or whatever. It's not the best version of yourself, or whatever the advice is. I'm just saying, it is good to have someone like that, because if we don't have a realistic starting place, even if the score is really low, like what you have to offer is starting at a not so much, at least you know where you're at. It's realistic. You know what you have to work on. You know what your strengths are, and it's like an honest inventory. And so I guess that's all I was saying, is that it's a balance, right? Because you're right, it does kind of sting, but sometimes we need that. That's all.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because at the end of the day, like you're the only person that's going to be able to accomplish whatever it is you're setting out to achieve. So if you have a false notion of where you're starting from, it's really difficult to figure out how to navigate to where you want to go. So if you have someone that can be on that journey with you, that's not going to give you, um, you know, false directions, that's very, very helpful. It can be painful, it can be unnerving, but at the end of the day, if you know the intentions are good, that's all that ultimately matters. So I love it. One of the reasons I love the name EmpowerMe, and I don't know if was that always the name, or was there like another name that it was initially going to be called before it became EmpowerMe? Weren't there other names prior to that were tossed around?
I'm sure there was.
Or Empower You, or something to that effect, where
Yeah.
we really talked about, I remember their discussion around it being like, this program is really to help teach new leaders how to take responsibility for their development. So like I think we had talked about empower you, but we wanted people to realize like you're the tool that's going to take you through this journey. So empower me meant like I own it, it's on me. And that's what taking full responsibility is all about, right? This program is an investment for you guys in yourself. You're taking time outside of your personal life to participate, whether you're reading the articles, watching the podcasts, or listening to the podcast. See, that's my age showing. Here we go, programs. um I make fun of him because he calls TV shows programs, which I think is just hilarious. Anyway, I digress.
Do you check what time they're on with the TV guide too? Red.
He doesn't know how to run the TV remote.
There was a little
The clicker, you mean?
the clicker.
I'm having connectivity problems right now. I just waiting for the sign off. That's all.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think like how fitting, because that's probably and again, I'm not saying this because I had the good fortune to be assigned this topic to come and speak about or to share with, but I truly feel like this is the most critical point, because I remember as a young professional, I was one of those people who was like focused on all that was wrong with the world. I was focused on how difficult the goals were. I was focused on how many roadblocks I had, or what was going on in my life that was preventing me from being whole at work. Or, it was always somebody else or something else's fault that prevented me from being my best self. And so when I finally discovered like the only thing that I can control in any case or any scenario is me. And what a powerful realization, because I'm a controller. So if I can figure out how to control anything in this world, it's the most powerful. It's the most, I think, I can't think of the right term that I want to use, but it creates such a sense of relief when you realize that no matter what's put in front of you, you always have control over how you handle it, how you respond to the circumstances around you. All right, let me ask you guys this other question, right? I highlighted so many things in these articles that really resonated with me, right? Nobody can push your buttons because you are the button maker. What do you think of that?
I want to jump in for a second on this one because I find this one interesting. And do you guys ever get into a conversation or have a conversation with somebody and you're like, that person made me mad. You made me mad. You said this and you made me mad. And when I first got married, I said that to my husband and he said, I didn't make you mad. You chose to be mad, right? You chose in that situation to be mad or upset about what was said, because what was said at the end of the day was honest, right? It was immensely honest and just very transparent. But I chose to not see the black and white of it, and I chose to bring the emotion to it, right? And I let that button be pushed, versus saying, okay, I'm going to take this moment and see it in this light and then this way that this person is trying to give me, and then I can choose whether or not it's going to push the button versus not choose the button. So I love the little quote, and it always brings me back to that. And at any point in time, if my kids say it, if somebody else says it to me, you made me mad when you said that. Well, you chose to be mad. It was a transparent and honest statement and transparent, honest information, and you chose to be upset. So let's discover that and find out why.
Love it. How do we feel about that, guys? That's a really challenging thought process, right? Because we're surrounded with people of all different backgrounds and experiences and thought processes all day long. And as a leader, we have to learn how to flex our style and create an inclusive environment where people are going to do what people are going to do, but we're on this journey together because we're trying to understand how to be like the master of our own reactions or responses. How do you feel about that? Because that's a tall ask to say, like, okay, quite frankly, I feel like this person is way out of line, or this situation is completely impossible. Button's there and they want to push it. And then ultimately we recognize that we're responsible for how we respond. How does that make you feel?
So I definitely like that's I like that question a lot too. It kind of implies kind of something from one of the articles too, is like about being present, because getting angry or having like a an anger or like a mad reaction, if you're not present, it's going to be a reaction. So you kind of have to like be in the moment, mindful. Okay, this is definitely something that I'm gonna react to a certain way. How do I take 2 seconds, take a deep breath, and realize, is that the right response in this situation? Like, you have to be very present, and that's something I struggle with, full admission, on occasion. Like, I can do it if I put my mind to it, but it's not my default setting. So I think that's like the implication there is like, it's, that button, can you cover up that button, and can you keep it like not out there for someone to press, like you just said? But you got to be like mindful of it. If that button is like right on your forehead all the time on a regular basis, how do you keep it from, getting pressed? If that makes sense.
Awesome. I'm so excited because we're moving into a topic that is my most favorite leadership lesson ever. And I almost feel guilty because I feel like I always talk about it. So some of you have probably already heard me talk about it. And Brian, you already kind of just alluded to it. There's this incredibly powerful tool that I had the good fortune to be exposed to, again, as a very young leader, because I was not good at hiding the button. And so I would go from like 0 to 100 so fast on certain things that just, I lacked the self-awareness to understand what my buttons were, or even that I was responding to somebody and had, again, victim status. I was like, well, you said X, Y, and Z, and I felt such and such way, so I'm justified in my reaction. And yeah, I was also very sensitive. So like when people would talk about how that made them feel, how my reactions made them feel, I was like, oh, that's not what I wanted either. And so what you alluded to is such a great practice. I just don't even know if you realize how intentional that can be. But so Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Leaders. One of those habits is called the space between stimulus and response. So stimulus being that button push, right? So somebody says something that just doesn't resonate well with you, they make a poor decision, something, and again, personal and professional, great tool. The space, you said take a couple seconds, right? Take time to decide and be intentional about how you respond. And I'll tell you, in the beginning, when I started practicing this, one, I have a little bit of anxiety and I'm super self conscious. So, at first, because it takes an incredible degree of self awareness, I was constantly self-analyzing, like over-analyzing. But the more self-aware you are of that internal, like you have that whole like tightness in your chest, your stomach gets a little kind of wonky, and you're like, oh, I'm going to react. If you can recognize those signals and then you create space, and that space might be physical, like I'd have to go for a walk. Like I can't talk to you right now because I know I'm going to say something that doesn't align with what I want my outcome to be, and I'm responsible for my reactions. So I'm going to take a walk. Sometimes I have to create like space and time, meaning like I can't talk about it today. I got to come back to it tomorrow. But then I give myself an opportunity to choose how to respond to the situation so that the outcome aligns with what I'm hoping to accomplish. So over time, what I learned is, as I became more and more self-aware of what those buttons were for me, or even if I had that internal reaction that I know was the result of the button push, I would create space and then choose my reaction and make sure that, or my response, and make sure that it aligned with, okay, what do I want my outcome to be? Like, I visualize, where do I want to go with this? How do I want this person to feel about me right now? Is it worth saying what wants to come out of my mouth right now, just for that like brief moment of satisfaction, and then the total utter guilt that I'm going to feel for being a jerk? Or what's the trade-off? And what I learned is, over time, that space became smaller and smaller, right? Those reactions, those buttons were less sensitive. And I took pleasure in having the control that I could react almost instantaneously to align my actions and my behaviors to what I wanted to get out of a situation. So the space between stimulus and response is a great tool to give you a higher degree of control over how you handle any reaction. Keeps you being the victor and not the victim.
That was awesome. Like, sorry, but there was a whole bunch of jewels in there in that last couple minutes, what you just shared. And I would need some time to go through my notes on that, but thank you for sharing that. Reg, she might have just stole your job real quick on the low.
I don't know
let
about
me.
that.
No, you know what? You know what's funny is, you know where I learned about stimulus-based response was from Amanda, because there was literally no space for me. Um, but I'll tell you what, just listening to that again, I just was taking a whole mess of notes as well, and I think that this is not, it's not necessarily built into this module, right? When we talk about taking full responsibility and examining a lot of those things, it's just really dawned on me that, because this is a facet as well of something we call emotional intelligence, and I feel like I need to build this into our overall EmpowerMe curriculum. You know, would like make that its own topic. What would you guys say to something like that? Not that I'm going to extend your experience by another month or anything, but like if I was building the next one, definitely, do you guys see value in spending time talking about understanding what triggers you, understanding the mechanisms in which you can kind of start to choose your response versus reacting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I'll
To
tell
kind
you
of,
what. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, to kind of like pair with what you were saying, I've always had a lot of patience, but I also learned a little bit from Amanda on the reaction thing, because my default wasn't to like overreact. It was just to not react, show absolutely nothing, and kind of be like a little bit stoic, which can also be a negative thing because now you just seem like you don't care.
Man, that is huge, because a lot of folks make the assumption that we're talking about something where we might emote something or have a lot of, nonverbals at play, but it can play the other way where you're not engaging anymore. And really what we're talking about is you're in a situation, at least with two parties. And so what you want to manage and maintain is the engagement. I am discussing something with someone, or I'm party to some message or to some piece, and I want to still be a part of this, but now my reaction to this is interfering with that. So the reaction could be to withdraw, so much so that you're not engaging, or to literally say, well, the words coming out of my mouth sound nice, but my face is telling you that I'm not real happy right now, right? So you know that those two things. So I love that piece. I'll tell you what I'll probably do is I will get to work on creating at least a podcast piece, a little bit more, and I might ask Amanda if she would, consent to maybe, sharing more around this piece, and we'll highlight that as a podcast piece in the short term.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And thank you for volunteering, Amanda, for the podcast.
Always. Always. How about this statement? Tell me how this resonates with you guys. Refuse to take anything personal. It's is most probably not about you.
Depending on the situation, I know sometimes like our customers will tell us, hey, I'm not personally mad at you, but their tone So, and sometimes that does affect me is, what is the tone versus the words that they're saying?
Mhm.
Or, in anything, sometimes the tone, can be, and if it happens to be somebody that's face to face, as Red had mentioned, what the words that are coming out of their mouth versus their facial expression can be three different things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I challenge us on this topic, right? I'm a big fan of coping skills because we're human. And so the fact that you recognize that that is a challenge for you, Elaine, is amazing because that's the first step, is recognizing like, okay, I know that I have this internal reaction to this type of conversation or this tone or this nonverbal. For me, I have a certain customer type. Y'all probably have some customers that you just know, like, oh, this one's gonna send me for a loop. But if you can try to remove yourself from the equation and think about it academically, right? Try to realize like, okay, realistically, this customer doesn't know you. This person that you're interacting with, your peer, whomever it is that's creating this, they're pushing your button. They don't know you, or they don't mean to interact with you in a certain way. Think about the fact that it's not likely personal, and that allows you another degree of control over how you engage in an interaction and keep yourself in a place where you can be proud of how you navigate any situation. Try to remove yourselves from the situation and think about it academically. Like if you were giving your friend advice on how they were handling a situation and it wasn't you, think about the power that you have when you remove yourself emotionally from the situation. All right, I have all these little nuggets that really stood out to me, so I'm just going to keep throwing them at you guys. What did you think about happiness does not come from outside of you? It's not your job. Excuse me, it's not the job of your partner, parent, friend, child, or anybody else to make you happy.
It's a true statement. We all have our own, um, we all are in control of our own destiny and how we feel. If I, wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm grumpy, then, it's my tone, it's my attitude that I have to change. Look for the good things that are there. Work for a wonderful company. I have great friends within that company. I have a home. I have my kids are healthy. Look for those positive things that are there every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at all the positives that surround you is a huge tool that we can have to make sure that we focus on what we can control, right? There's a lot that goes on in the world that we can't control.
Can
I
I?
found
Oh, go ahead. 'Cause you don't
I was
want
gonna
to.
say I found that I could apply that to my personal life a little bit more than work life, but my wife and I constantly have the conversation of not taking each other for granted and giving ourselves happiness. Like if my wife's having a bad day and I try to do something nice for her and she doesn't necessarily turn all around and become happy-go-lucky, that affects me. But realistically, the whole time it's both of us relying on the other to provide the happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we try to keep on the forefront of, like, well, I have to choose to be happy in situations, even if this stuff doesn't happen. That's okay. That's their decision.
Yeah, I love that. I was listening to you and I was thinking it's weird because there's a when you talk about especially loved ones, someone that you care for, there's a little bit of romanticism to say, hey McG, you make me happy, right? It's like,
Mhm.
and y'all laughing, right? Because we've said this most likely, but there's the kind of, you strip it down, there's a power transference issue there. It means now you're dependent. I need McG to make me happy. Um, it doesn't sound as romantic to say I'm happy with McG, right? But in some terms,
I'm happy with McG.
yeah, I'm happy with McG, right? But because now it starts with me. There's things that I might recognize, attributes and the benefits of the relationship and the exchange, but those are things now that are in my definition column. These are things that I have said, these are value points and these are the things. So I think that is a tremendous thing. And I wanted to, at the expense of eating clock, I wanted to share a story too with you guys around the happiness thing because I thought it was really interesting. Um, Believe it or not, like I've had some dips in my career. Like I'll let that sink in because you're all probably like, "What? No way, Red." But I did. I had like this period of my career where things were not going well, and I say period, I'm talking years, and I didn't realize it. I just kept thinking I just was making bad political moves, bad judgment calls. And I didn't realize that I was also shifting where I was just interpreting everything around me as having a motive or here we go again or that thing is just, every sentence that kind of was coming out of my mouth wasn't really a great sentence. And then I was sitting and talking with a leader that worked for us many years ago, and they said, Red, I don't know if you realize this, but man, you're incredibly negative, and that just, I don't know if I can really sit and keep talking to you. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't even heard. I was more like, what? You don't know what you're talking about. But the person slipped me a piece of paper, and on the paper said 12 things that happy people do. And I was like, yeah. Oh, aren't you clever? You even had a sheet of paper on your desk to give the good old Red. And I took it to my desk and I sat it on my desk, and I honestly didn't look at that paper for another 2 months. And then I was cleaning my desk, and I said, well, do I throw this out? And as I was getting ready to throw it out, I decided to look at the list, and I do have at least the one quality is that I find it easy to laugh at myself. And as I read the list, I started laughing at myself because I realized I didn't do any of the things. I wasn't actively doing any of the things that this author had said 12 things happy people do. And then I started to really think about, well, why is that? Man, holy cow, I used to be a really, happy-go-lucky guy, very passionate. Um, and as I got down to the end of my self-examination, I realized it's because I was in a situation where certain things were happening to me, but I wasn't spending any time on all the things that I also was doing to just kind of keep me stuck in that rut. I think I heard Amanda talk about like a rut. And so I started just kind of going, well, I can't change the actions and decisions of some of the events that happened to me, but I do know that I wasn't my best self here. I wasn't being true to myself there. And so I started to make these kind of small incremental changes. I went and talked to some people that I wasn't my best self to, and I started to course correct. I wanted them to know that I'm making this change, so on and so forth. And now this is the long story, and I'm sorry, but what was really bizarre, and again, I think I heard this from several of you in the group, was first I felt like I was moving again. I didn't even know that I was just stuck. Every day was this cycle of I'm not really happy. I just didn't know it. I thought I was working and doing my stuff. But the moment I started to take accountability of my actions and saying, well, I can hold myself to a different standard, all of a sudden I felt like, well, now I've got something to look forward to, and I'm going to go out and correct this, and I'm going to improve upon that. And I felt like I was moving again. And in that experience, I became happier with why I even took this job in the first place, why I wanted to come to T-Mobile and lead and contribute. So sorry for the long story, but so many of you guys were touching on it. I was like, oh, they're telling my story. Oh, they're telling my story. But there is this kind of catharsis piece too about saying, okay, well, I'll just look at the things in those moments that I've been involved in something that I didn't like, and I'm going to replay that real quick and say, well, if I could change what I did here, how I responded there, how would I be my true self? And then you'll find yourself, your brain will kick in, and your emotion will kick in, and you'll start making changes, and you will feel like, hey, this is a whole different game. I'm moving forward, and you'll get happy. So anyway, thanks for letting me share all that crazy with you. But you guys, I was over here just dancing in my seat, like, do I tell them my story? When can I tell?
Awesome. I think that's part of the journey too, is to recognize that there's going to be ebbs and flows. And if you can focus on some of those challenging times as honestly some of the most powerful gifts, especially as future leaders. That's the other thing that I think took me a long time to accomplish, is when I go through a period of challenge, my natural reaction, like most people, is I get frustrated, I get down, I get discouraged. That's human nature. But I had to mentally change my internal dialogue to say, okay, I'm growing through this. Like, I'm learning something, I'm becoming a stronger leader. I can teach people how to navigate some of these storms a little better because I'm going through this period of turmoil, so to speak, right? And as Reg just shared, even more powerful is when you can stop and recognize how you're contributing to the turmoil, right? I think a really good step is to focus less on like what's happening to me and more on how am I responding to it. There's so much power. I think it was referred to in the article as calm confidence. Like, I got this. I've got this, because you are your best resource. No matter what you're experiencing, knowing that you have the power to control how you respond to anything is incredibly empowering, which is the reason I love the fact that we landed on EmpowerME. Love it. What other thoughts do you guys have as it relates to this? This stuff's heavy, like heavy in the best possible way. Like, it's deep, not heavy. It's just deep. Or y'all can get self-reflective. That's okay too.
Well,
I'm kind of thinking. So yes, we take a step back and we rethink what we're gonna say of our reactions. Do we know what to say? Is where I'm really at. Like, what do I say? How do you say it? Those types of things is really
Yeah, like,
where I'm at.
yeah. And kind of like, same things in terms of like, if my like habitual reactions aren't serving me, then where is um, the new like pool of, reactions and responses? Where is that located? If it's not, in me intrinsically, then is it about, shadowing people who are, um, both, in my personal life and my professional life, like, oh, there is someone who I want to emulate. I don't have those tools. It doesn't feel like I have them at my disposal, but I want to do better and be better. So if my knee-jerk reactions aren't getting me where I want to go, then where do I start looking, and in which directions do I start reaching out to help me along the path that I want to be on,
So
Laura, I
good
love.
question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Okay. I want to challenge you because I love what you're kind of throwing out there, right? About, like, I have these challenges in my responses, and like, where can I reach, or where can I look for some tools, or some, I want to say power. I think is the best word that I can use to describe, to overcome those responses. And I've had a couple interesting conversations over the last couple of days. And one of the things that just constantly keeps coming up is you have the tools and the power within yourself if you focus on the strengths that you have, right? And you can overcome those obstacles and those challenges in those situations when it comes to your responses based on the strengths that you already behold and have. It's harder to look at your strengths and to really sit down and say, which has been a process of EmpowerME, right? Is defining
Yes.
what those are and looking at what those are. And it's harder to do that, to sit down and say, here's where I'm really, really good and what I like about myself and what I do and how I do it, right? I'm intuitive. I'm transparent, I'm honest, I'm ethical, right? All of those things are valuable things and strengths to have. And then how do you then take those pieces and emulate them to overshadow and overcome that obstacle or that challenge that you're trying to kind of take over? And then in those moments where you are reacting versus responding, right? You take a step back, you think about that challenge, or I'm sorry, that strength, and that's where you then pull from your own power.
I love that.
yeah,
Thank you.
Uh, sorry, Red.
you're good,
Uh,
Caleb.
give
Go.
perspective on that. Like, I kind of went through a process, like I didn't really know what to do with things that I was habitually doing. And I got a good little nugget from my coach Joe of like just do something different. If it's wrong, you'll figure it out. Like, don't be afraid to mess up a couple of times because you're not going to learn anything if you don't try it.
Yes, absolutely.
You're gonna get a squirt bottle of water. I'm getting mad. Um, but here I'll give you guys a couple other things to consider. First, what I liked is hearing is that you guys are like, okay, man, I'm hearing things, but what do I do when I'm in the moment? And and I've got to process and think that. So I'm gonna maybe put some things out there, and this will lead into one of our last topics of Empower Me. But think already within the circle of people that are in your life, and think of, is there at least one or two people that you've observed who seem to be in good possession of themselves? Like slow to get rattled or very deliberate in their responses, measured in their tone. And if you're like, yeah, you know what, there is somebody in my circle that always seems to at least have a good handle on that, go ask them how they do it, right? Go ask them how they do it and start kind of a networking relationship in which you can kind of explore methods they use and where you might be able to share your concerns or how you might navigate it. The other thing, though, that I would tell you is literally get a piece of paper and create 3 columns, 3 vertical columns. And in that left column, write down, label it buttons or triggers, right? What are like 3, and just list 3 things that generally push my buttons, right? And so like I wrote down politics. You know what? You get hooked up in a conversation with someone on politics, there's a really good chance my button might get pushed, right? And so in that column, I write politics in that far left. The next column over, I say, well, what is my typical reaction? What is my typical reaction? And it could be a couple of things. I know what I used to do right now, though. I think we talked about, where we get super quiet. I withdraw. And what I realize is because I'm afraid that if I don't withdraw, I might, say stupid stuff. But it helps me visually to go, hey, that's my trigger, and this is generally my reaction, right? So I like to see it on paper, and then I let myself get a little free and say, because here's the thing, guys, we're not asking you to all of a sudden fall in love with the things that used to trigger you. That's almost too big of an ask. What we're really focused on is, in that moment, how do I want to move forward? That's the part we're asking you to take control of, to overcome your reaction, not necessarily whether you're ever going to like somebody's political standpoint or the way that they eat their food or what have you, right? So for me, I'm like, I could do one of 2 things. I could show curiosity, right? Could I maybe engage somebody who's expressing a political view that my daughter, who was just in your frame, could I show more curiosity and make it more academic and not try to win this argument? Or is there a better way for me to politely excuse myself? But in the exercise now, I'm trying to just kind of like, okay, if I did that, will that work? If I did that, does that really get me where I want to be? And it's just a simple exercise you can do on paper. And if you decide to do that, don't go too deep, 1, 2, or 3 things, but maybe in combination, you've got your list. Now I'm going to walk over and talk to that person that I think has really got their handle on this, and maybe I can talk about my list. What do you guys think of that?
Brad, is that what the third
suggestion.
column is? Sorry, I just so first column, 3 things that are buttons or triggers.
Right.
Second column, what's my normal reaction?
Yes.
And then I heard we're gonna go over and bounce that off that person that we like how they carry themselves. We like what they have or whatever. I want to say not their like wife or job title or car, but I mean like their
Right.
how they carry themselves.
Yeah.
What goes in that third column now?
Well, the third column might be your ideas of what you might do to stay engaged without being triggered.
See, I heard you say it, but I missed it. Thanks.
It's quite all right. I'm glad you asked.
It's scary. I missed it too.
Yeah, I just made up my own title for that column because I missed what you said, but yours is better. I just put my desired reaction.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's what
Can I
I'll tell
ask a
you.
question?
Oh, go ahead.
Have you guys talked about building your brand yet? Is that part future
It's
curriculum?
coming. It's coming. Two more titles, 2 more episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I want to give you guys a little bit of homework for 2 episodes from now. Because Lauren Lee asked, like, well, what do I do? Like, I know how I normally react, and I think Red's advice is really on point as well. But a big part of the stimulus space response action is to, like, you have to visualize what you want your outcome to be. And so if that outcome can be true to your brand, who you are, there's so much value in that process because it allows you to feel that calm confidence that you can make a choice to respond in a way that's true to who you are. So as you guys start thinking about your brand, that's ultimately your goal, is to act in a way that's in accordance to who you are as a person and what you want to be. How do you want to be perceived? Like, do you want to be perceived as someone who is cool, calm, and collected and isn't triggered easily? Do you want to be perceived as someone who isn't victimized by the circumstances around them? Or do you want to be perceived as someone who is in control, focused on, taking action in a constructive way and is there to help support and influence others in a positive way, But
Dang.
when you guys think
Yeah.
about building your brand, that's a really powerful tool for you to help visualize what do you want the outcome to be in this situation.
I
That's
like that.
huge.
There's like the 4th column. So it's like, here's your trigger. Here's how I'd normally respond or whatever. Here's what I might say differently, this desired whatever. And then the kind of like, what's the outcome we're looking for? Do I just want to keep the peace? Am I thinking of a way to be a positive person in the situation, whether it's like the workplace, family, whatever the environment is? And,
Mhm.
because it might not always be the same goal for everyone, but I like that pause. It gives me something to actually think about. So I'm not just like counting to 10 in my head to not like blow my stack, and actually like something to be doing inside,
Mhm.
to not react and to respond like intelligently.
Yeah, once you collect yourself, you kind of have some action steps. So I know we're at the end of our time. So I just want to offer, guys, if anyone wants to continue the conversation or you want to chat one-on-one, something I'm extremely passionate about because it's helped me to get where I am today. I was a very impulsive and reactionary, immature young leader. And I know I still look young. But I've been at this a really long time and it's never ending. That's the other thing about how powerful these tools are, is because you get to continue to invest in yourself forever. And that in and of itself is an incredible feeling. It enhances that sense of empowerment. So thank you guys for having me. It's been incredible. And I wish you guys all the best in your journey. And if there's anything I could ever do, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Amanda.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Amanda. We appreciate it. Miss Jonna, I want to say thank you to you for coming and hanging out with us as well. Guys, just before I let you go, we will put a recorded version out on our YouTube channel. So again, have you guys subscribed?
Yep.
All right, because if it's on your to-do list, I put the link in the chat. So, click it and subscribe. But we'll get a
Smash that like button.
smash that like button, like my daughter says. And as soon as we host tomorrow's, I'll work on getting the one pager out for our next topic next month. Is always raise your standards. It's a really cool and complex piece. It's really good. So thank you guys so much. Love you. Keep pushing. Keep moving forward. We believe in you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, guys.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Go Celtics.
What's the score?